All right, folks, welcome to a new video. We're going to get right into an exercise that I hope all of you can find time to do. This is crucial for your growth. If you do this constantly and you continue to come back to your inner temple, and this exercise is called the inner temple exercise. It's found in Philip Cooper's book, Basic Magic, pretty much all of his books. This exercise has improved my life massively. It's allowed me to use the 4 elements of magic, which are known as air, fire, earth, and water, to completely transform my psyche and to really grow and evolve. The inner temple exercise is going to allow you to do deep introspection, and it's really going to allow you to reevaluate what is in your mind. If you want to get rid of the mind control, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to go into your mind and remove and scrub and purge all the accumulated baggage and garbage that we've accumulated throughout the years. You've got to go into your mind, question your belief systems, recreate belief systems. There is so much filth in the mind, and I'm not going to get into that right now. I just want to read this exercise. This is found on page 35 of Philip Cooper's book, Basic Magic, the Inner Temple Exercise. Now, it says here, just imagine you see in front of you an encircled cross. I put an attachment of an encircled cross to this video so that you can see what it looks like. The encircled cross is a very important symbol in relation to magic and learning what magic or using magic. I've talked about this in a handful of my different videos here on the Patreon page about magic. So go back into those videos. If you haven't seen any of the videos I've produced on magic, this video probably won't make much sense to you. So please go back into the Learning the Magical Arts tab here on the Patreon page and watch those videos so that you have a solid foundation of information to go off of. Because each of these videos that I produce on magic build off of the previous lessons that I've produced. So the encircled cross, very important. It represents so many different things. Just imagine you see in front of you an encircled cross. Move towards this symbol in your imagination. You see that this symbol is emblazoned on a door. Move toward this door and touch it. The door opens, revealing an inner temple. The temple is quite dark inside, apart from a single light suspended from the ceiling in the shape of a crown. You are in a large square room. On the floor, there are intricate designs which seem to be woven around an encircled cross. Right in the center, underneath the light set in the floor, is a circular pool filled with water. Let me just move my notes. Set in the middle of each wall is an archway and door. These are colored. The one in front of you is yellow and is associated with the east. The one on your right is red and associated with the south. The one behind you is blue, west. And the one to your left is green and is associated with the north. You move toward the yellow arch. Floating in the air in front of the door, point up, is a sword. Look at this sword and study it well, for it is yours. Something is engraved on the blade. Can you see what it says? Move toward the red archway. Inside the arc, floating in the door, in front of the door, is a spear. Once again, there is something engraved on the shaft. Now move on to the blue archway, where you will find a chalice. There it is. Look at it and study the engraving on it. What does it say? Finally, move to the green archway. Inside, in front of the door, there is a shield. It has a very simple yet special design on it. Remember this, for it is your personal design. There is also something engraved on the shield. Can you see it? Now go back to the pool in the center of the temple. This is a magic pool. The water is not really water. It is power and energy. Later, you will learn how to use this. This pool, ladies and gentlemen, just to briefly deviate, is how you connect with your subconscious mind, and it's very important. This exercise may sound simple, it may sound silly right now, but the more you come back to your inner temple and the more you work with these symbols, the sword, the spear, the chalice, the shield, the more you work with the elements. Again, each doorway is a doorway into a different elemental kingdom. I can walk through the doorway of the east and travel into a temple just associated with the element of air. And in that temple, I can learn things from the element. I can contemplate how I associate with the element, and I can do massive consciousness and psychic evolution by working with my mind this way. I've gone into my temple so goddamn much, and I've used this to such an extent I don't really know how to simplify things and explain just how important this exercise is. If you continue to come back into your inner temple, you will find that the temple actually grows and evolves the more you come into it, and you can learn from this temple. You can scry and stare into the pool in the middle of the temple and receive oracles. You can go into the inner temple and meditate. That's what I do. I do a lot of self-introspection. This is absolutely important. Most of us do not have a system that we can use where we can connect with our own minds. And this inner temple exercise is how you do it. The inner temple is far more important, folks, than having a physical temple. Luckily, I do have the space and the luxury of having a physical temple where I practice my magic here in Virginia. But what's most important is the temple that you carry in your brain, the temple that you carry in your mind, in your heart. By doing this, you start to connect with your subconscious mind. You start to connect with the four elements, ladies and gentlemen: earth, air, fire, and water. And you can learn massive amounts of information just by communicating with yourself in this temple and by working with the elements. People ask me all the time, how do you start working with magic? You begin this way, ladies and gentlemen. Most of magic is mental. You begin working with your mind, you begin meditating with the inner temple, and you begin working with and learning from the four elements. And you have 4 elemental gateways inside of this inner temple, where you can interact with the symbols associated with each of the elements. Again, east is associated with the sword. South is associated with the spear or the rod. West is associated with the chalice that holds water. And north is associated with the shield. These symbols, the language of the subconscious mind, ladies and gentlemen, is symbolism. Now, I've explained why the subconscious mind is so important in previous lessons. I don't really want to get into it in this video, but the subconscious mind is where all of our power resides, ladies and gentlemen. And it's the part of our mind, I can't speak today, where most of our latent power resides. Our conscious mind, we use our conscious mind, information gets fed through our conscious mind, through our senses. But behind that, ladies and gentlemen, behind the limited scope of the programmed senses, there's an infinite field of mental power known as your subconscious mind. And again, if you want to learn more about what the subconscious mind is and why it's so important and how it relates to magic, please go back into the Learning the Magical Arts tab or series and do a little bit of digging and check out my refresher course on lesson 1 and watch all of those videos. I'll read a couple passages about the subconscious mind in just a moment from Philip Cooper's book, Basic Magic, which we're reading now. But this, ladies and gentlemen, this light makes me look pale as hell. But this is incredibly important. I mean, you can evolve yourself by eating specific foods, things like reishi mushroom, things like lion's mane, which stimulate something known as neurogenesis, which is the proliferation of new neurons. You can actually regrow your brain with lion's mane mushroom. There are certain things that you can do to massively improve or upgrade your life, ladies and gentlemen, with food, with exercise. But if you really want to evolve yourself, if you really want to if you really want to deprogram your mind and reprogram it so that you can become a completely new human, then you need to undertake a purging process through going back to your inner temple regularly, questioning all your beliefs, questioning your religious belief systems. Of course, my dogs are going crazy. It's just crucial that you do this. But let's continue, ladies and gentlemen. We are on page 36 of Philip Cooper's book, Basic Magic. Now go back to the pool in the center of the temple. This is a magic pool. The water is not really water. It is power and it is energy. Later on, you will learn how to use this. It does have one other use, however. Just like a crystal ball, it can be used to see into the future. Look into its depths, and it will tell you things and give you answers to questions. Look into the depths and allow images to come into your mind. If you like, you can use some meditation music or slow drumming and have this playing throughout the exercise period. Spend as long as you like meditating at the pool. A good period is about 5 minutes. That's a good start, ladies and gentlemen, but you really need to get yourself to the point where you can enjoy being in this temple. I spend sometimes over an hour a day in my inner temple when I am doing this regularly. I go through periods where I do it, where I do and I don't, but I always come back to this meditation. I always come back to my inner temple. Every time I cast a spell, anytime I light a candle, pretty much I travel to my inner temple and consecrate it, excuse me. Spend as long as you like meditating at the pool. A good period is about 5 minutes. When the exercise comes to an end, there's no need to go the long way back. This is a magical land. Right in front of you, there is a door. Just walk towards it and you are back in your own room in your own time once more. Before you forget any important points, write these down in your notebook. One day they will come in very useful. Always remember you can enter this magical temple anytime you wish. Eventually you will make this journey in just a few seconds. I can literally be there in 2 seconds if I wanted to. This is your bat cave, ladies and gentlemen. This is your fortress of solitude from Superman. You know, he had that crystal place where he would go to unwind. This is that type of escape for you. It's crucial that you have something like this in this crazy world. It is really cold in here. Let me turn the fan down, folks. But you need to pick up his books. These are absolutely crucial. Let me see if there's anything else on. Okay, there's another passage called Building an Inner Temple, and that's on page 32. The inner temple is a magical tool used to contact subconscious power. Your subconscious mind responds to imagery, pictures, and symbols. The inner temple is a perfect blend of these two principles. Building an inner temple is quite easy. Given a little time, it will help to build itself. You know how I mentioned earlier how the more you come back to this temple, the more it will evolve itself? For instance, when I first did the inner temple exercise, ladies and gentlemen, which in my opinion is the foundation of all real practical magic, you have to have this key. If you try to do all this stuff just physically, you're not going to have any effect on the mind. You mean if you just built, for instance, a physical temple and you ignored all this mental work, you might be able to produce some results with your magic. You know, you might be able to make some changes in your reality, but if you actually spend the time to first build your mental temple and really work things out in your mind, you are going to have such a huge effect on your subconscious, on every aspect of your life, and you're really going to start to evolve. So I just want to reread this. Building an inner temple. The inner temple is a magical tool used to contact subconscious power. Your subconscious mind responds to imagery, pictures, and symbols. The inner temple is a perfect blend of these two principles. Building an inner temple is quite easy. Given a little time, it will help to build itself. The more, for instance, again, I mentioned this and then I kind of got off topic. The first time I came to my inner temple, it was a very basic, just square room. There was dirt on the floor. And the second time I came back to the inner temple, I noticed that things were a little bit different. There was the dirt floor was now a brick floor, and then it evolved into what it is now, which is pretty much it's reached a perfected state. You come back and you notice that things are different. It's a beautiful way to increase your ability to visualize things as well, which is very crucial. The inner temple is a very special place holding many secrets. This temple is built within the mind of the magician. Whatever you build in your mind does exist, perhaps not in a physical sense, but it exists in most certainty. But it does exist. It most certainly does. Excuse me. This is your very own temple of the mind, your inner kingdom. Remember those famous words, but rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all things shall be added unto you. Find the kingdom first, then you will have whatever you wish. Where is the kingdom? The kingdom of God lies within your own mind. You will discover this inner kingdom, and simply by using your imagination, you may enter the kingdom whenever you wish. So this book is just... it's been a while since I've actually read this particular book, but I'm definitely going to reread it because Philip Cooper's books separate all the superstition and garbage out there that there is about magic. And, you know, if you are naive like I was when I was in my early 20s and late teens and you just start picking up books on magic and you take everything that the author says at face value, magic can drive you mentally ill, ladies and gentlemen. It can create a lot of superstitious belief systems that don't benefit you. It can develop kind of like this OCD type of mentality towards your spiritual life. It's really crucial that if you're interested in practicing magic, that you do it properly. And the only way that I can, there's Philip Cooper's books, let's just put it this way, are the way to do it. So pick up some of his books. And even if you're not going to pick up his books, you can take the meditation that I just gave you and make massive change in your life just by going back and forth to your inner temple. I do it when I enter my inner temple. I usually enter one of the 4 elemental doors and travel into a very specific. When I walk through each of the elemental doors, ladies and gentlemen, it transports me to a different temple that's associated with that element. So for instance, when I walk through the elemental door or gateway or archway of the air that's painted, that's a yellow door, it takes me to a isolated temple associated with air, where I can work with that element, where I can get to know that element, where I can use that element to contemplate certain things, because each element is associated with different qualities. I have a fire temple that I travel to that I use to reinvigorate myself with life force, ladies and gentlemen. I recently had to do a lot of firework on myself because I had reached a very stressful point in my life recently. I had a ton of stress beaming down on me and just wearing away at my mind. And when it had reached a head, I traveled into my inner temple, walked through the gateway of the south, which is a red archway, and I was transported to my fire temple, which I built with my own mind. And I started a fire in that temple and sat in front of it and allowed the heat to just penetrate through my body. And I allowed the heat to really invigorate my mind. And I repeated certain affirmations in that mental temple that about how everything was going to be okay. Each of my elemental temples, ladies and gentlemen, is its own temple, and you can use these specific meditative rooms, so to speak, these meditative temples, if you will, to massively affect your psyche. And after about 3 or 4 hours of meditating in my fire temple, I came out of it and all the stress was gone. All the stress was gone. So in my fire temple, for instance, and I don't want to get too personal because each person should erect their own temple and allow your own imagination and creative skills to create these temples. Well, for instance, if you start practicing the inner temple exercise and you walk through the archway of the east, you may not be taken to a temple. You may be taken to a desert. You may be taken to you might be floating in the air, thousands of feet up in the sky. Don't allow my interpretations of my temple to affect how you go about experiencing these meditations. It's very important that you don't take preconceived information and allow it to create your own experience or override your own experience. Use your own creativity and don't allow what I'm saying to affect how you experience this exercise, because this is the foundation of magic, ladies and gentlemen. And a lot of people don't like hearing that because a lot of people are driven by the 5 senses and they constantly want to be on their phone. They constantly want to be watching TV. They don't want to meditate. They don't want to visualize. They don't want to travel into their own psyche and use it as a psychic laboratory to rebuild themselves, to purge themselves with all the mind control and the nonsense. How are you going to purge yourself with the mind control if you're constantly in a state where you're just dominated by your 5 senses? You need to enter into more like a delta brainwave meditative state so that you can bypass the machinations of the conscious mind and become more introspective. You do that through meditation. You do that through this exercise. But for me, ladies and gentlemen, again, not to get too personal, when I travel into my fire temple, the first time I did it, it was just a cave with a fire in it. And I went and I sat by the fire and it warmed me up spiritually. It warmed me up emotionally. And the second time I came back, this time there was a table off to the side with some specific tools on it. The next time I came back, there was some more things. There was inscriptions on the wall. It's gotten to the point now where I've been to the inner temple so much that I know the lay of the land, or I've been to my fire temple, especially more than any other of the other. I go to my fire temple more than any of the other elemental kingdoms, because I think that I need fire in my life more than in the other elements. Although you need balance of all four elements, you can't become deficient or overabundant in a particular element. And fire, at least at this point in my life, is so crucial. That's why I light candles all the time. But another thing you can do, just to go, you can go into your inner temple, ladies and gentlemen, and consecrate things like candles. I do that often. I will get a bunch of candles, for instance, for candle magic. I'll hold them in my hands, go into my inner temple, and go into, for instance, maybe the air temple if I'm doing an air magic ritual with candles. And I'll go into my air temple and consecrate and bless those candles from within that elemental temple. Sometimes I don't need to enter into an elemental temple, however, and I can just go into my inner temple and sit before the pool in the middle of the inner temple. I hope this is making sense. I keep saying inner temple and temple. I've probably said that word 1,000 times already. I apologize for the repetition. But the inner temple, just to simplify things, ladies and gentlemen, is a refuge for your mind. It's a place that you can come to contact the subconscious mind in power directly. It is also a way to start working with the four elements, which are the foundations of all practical magic, as well as esoteric magic. And those are air, fire, water, and earth, ladies and gentlemen. You want to start practicing magic? Start working with the elements. Start working with the elements mentally. So now I don't want to tell you what each of the elements represents, because I think it's more important that you just go into your temple and start working with the elements personally and see how they affect you. Again, preconceived notions about what things are before you experience them yourself is a huge problem here in this world. Everybody approaches everything with someone else's interpretation. But I will give you a brief synopsis on the elements, just really briefly, but it's really important that you create your own beliefs based on your interactions with them. I think Philip has, bear with me one second, ladies and gentlemen. What's interesting too is the elements. For instance, the air element, which is associated with the east, is associated with spring. The south and fire is associated with summer. The west and the element of water is associated with autumn, and the north, which is associated with earth, is winter. East is the new moon. South is the first quarter. West is the full moon. North is the last quarter, and again, east is the new moon. So the elements represent much more than just the elements. They actually represent the ebb and flow of the way things work here in this universe. You know, the East, for instance, also represent the four elements. Also represent the four fundamental principles of the four foundational principles of nature, which are weak nuclear force, strong nuclear force, electromagnetism, and gravity. I believe those are the four. It's been a while. I'm a little rusty right now, ladies and gentlemen. You'll have to excuse me. But let me just see if there is a page on the elements. The four gateways of power, 69. Bear with me, folks. This the inner temple is also where you start working with what's known as the encircled cross and turning that encircled cross into the cosmic sphere. I'll have to do a actual video on how to cast a proper circle in the near future, if that's something you guys are interested in. But I thought he had a breakdown of... I thought for sure he had a breakdown of each of the elements in this book, and I'm sure he does, but I don't want to bore you guys while I sift through all this. But for instance, like air represents, in intellectual things. It represents the mind. It represents the mind's ability to be distracted as well. So that's a very simplistic way of describing what air is. Air is also, we need it to breathe. Every breath we take, without air, we die. So air is a very mental thing. Typically speaking, air is associated with the mind, is what the good qualities of the mind and the bad. So what I do, or what I've done, is when I started working with the inner temple exercise, I went into the doorway of the east associated with the air. I was instantly transported somewhere else, a specific temple just for the air, the element of air. And I used that temple to question all of my beliefs, to question the quality of my thoughts and my mind. And in that temple, I rebuilt my thoughts. I used the elemental doorway in the temple. Jesus Christ. I hope I'm making sense. Excuse me. I go into the fire temple to refortify myself with vigor. I go into the water temple to work on my emotional state, and I go into the northern temple to connect with nature and to work on my stability in life, to work on my strength, to work on manifestation work. Each of these temples has a particular virtue. Each of these elements, has a particular virtue that's unique unto that element, and you can use these elements to reprogram your psyche based on each of these virtues. It's very important. The way you begin practicing real magic by meditating with the inner temple and working with each of the elements. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. We overcomplicate things here in this matrix to such an extent that it doesn't even seem approachable by the end of it. We want to use a simple system of magic if we're going to practice magic. And Philip Cooper's work is the greatest starting point. I'm currently in the process of putting my own book together on how to do specific meditations and whatnot so that you can begin to evolve yourself mentally. This is crucial. We need to work on our minds, folks. So I don't want to tether a bunch of content to this video. I just wanted to make this video specifically on the inner temple exercise. So to keep things simple and to wrap things up, the inner temple is your own fortress of solitude, ladies and gentlemen. It's a place that you can come to find refuge in this crazy world. It is the psychic laboratory that you will use to rebuild your mind by contemplating everything that you've accumulated, all of your beliefs, all of your mental constructs. It's very difficult to question yourself, ladies and gentlemen, and to question your beliefs if you're dominated by being awake, for instance. Like if you're driving your car, it can be very difficult to question your belief systems and whether or not they're, working or benefiting you. If you're driving your damn car because you're dominated by your five senses, you're trying to stay alive. What I would suggest doing is every night before bed, do the inner temple exercise for at least 5 minutes. Try to work yourself up to 20 minutes. Try to work yourself up to an hour. Try to get yourself to a point where you actually want to enter this temple, because chances are you'll find, ladies and gentlemen, that you get agitated by even thinking about sitting down to meditate. And that is proof of our programming. We have spent the majority of our lives being awake during the day and doing mundane things, and then falling asleep at night and just kind of waking up and repeating. Most Americans don't meditate. And if they do meditate, oftentimes they meditate in a way that doesn't really, you want to work. If you're going to meditate, work with the four elements. Work with these four fundamental principles that inhabit everything in this world. The four elements are the building blocks of this material world, ladies and gentlemen. And if you read Philip Cooper's books, if you start working with this stuff, you'll find that there's actually you have the four elements, but you also have the fatherly energy that is symbolized as a crown, and you have the earthly energy, which is symbolized, I view it as a castle. And you have below you and above you these energies, this father energy and this feminine energy. So when you cast a circle, you have in front of you and on your sides and behind you the four elements, but you also have above you the father energy, and you have below you the female energy. and you can connect all of these points and create a sphere, which is known as the cosmic sphere, and you can build that in your inner temple. And once you learn how to visualize that, ladies and gentlemen, you could now come back into the physical world after you've done your meditations and envision this sphere around you. And your life will change massively if you do this regularly, because now you have a way to envision a perfected symbol around you that is a master symbol for the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind understands in the ins and outs of what's known as the encircled cross. The encircled cross is, I hope that I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I was going to stitch or attach a symbol of the encircled cross for you guys to see what it looks like if you're going to do this exercise, because in the beginning of the exercise, you see a door with an encircled cross on it, and you touch it and it opens and you're transported to your temple. But the subconscious mind understands exactly what this symbol represents. It understands that it represents, the 4 cardinal points, the 4 phases of the moon, the 4 seasons, the 4 fundamental principles of physics, you name it. So by using this symbol, you can begin to massively improve your life for the better. Now, as you learn to envision this symbol and you use the elements inside your inner temple, which are associated with this symbol, you can start associating or connecting the father energy I'm not even going to get into it. I'm getting kind of complicated. Just start doing this exercise, ladies and gentlemen, and your life will improve for the better. Until next time, peace be with you.